lost her.
Oh, you just unplugged Leslie.
That was Leslie.
Uh-oh. Technical difficulties. Happy New Year.
She's disconnected now.
Jill did it.
Jill disconnected her.
Hello, you're back on.
Thank you.
Okay, on that note, I would like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody to the January 9th, 2019 regular board meeting, first board meeting of the year. Happy New Year, everybody. As we begin this meeting, the board would like to recognize and honor the first peoples of the Puget Sound territories by acknowledging that we are on the land of the coastal Salish tribes. Ms. Ramirez, the roll call, please.
Director Burke.
Here.
Director DeWolf.
Here.
Director Geary.
Here.
Director Mack. Here. Director Pinkham.
Present.
Director Harris.
Here.
If everyone would stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Today, students from Salmon Bay K-8 will be performing scenes from As You Like It by William Shakespeare. I'd like to invite directors to take a seat with me in the audience for this performance, and I welcome our guests.
Thank you so much. We're honored to be here today. My name is Glide Hartking. I am the one-woman theater department at Salmon Bay School. Yes, thank you, thank you. I am thrilled to feel the support of the arts in Seattle Public Schools, Gail Selhorst in particular, driving force behind it. I know that visual art and music are large in the elementary and the middle school curriculum, and theater not so much. But theater is a place where those two things come together, that integrates language arts and visual arts and music and all different kinds of life skills, 20th century skills, 21st century skills that are very, very useful. Not to mention the fact that we continue to do Shakespeare 400 years later. And it amazes me that the words of that bard are still so relevant today, and you will hear some words that really are very good for what we're going through here in the U.S. So without further ado, the students will introduce themselves, and you will enjoy. Thank you.
My name is Griffin Martin, and I am in 8th grade, and I'm going to do Marsutio's monologue from Romeo and Juliet. Oh, then I see Queen Mab hath been with you. She's the fairy's midwife, and she comes in shape no bigger than an agate stone on the forefinger of an alderman, drawn by a team of little atomies over men's noses as they lie asleep. Her wagon spokes made of long spinner's legs, her cover of the wings of grasshoppers, her traces of the smallest spider web, her colors of the moonshine's watery beams, her whip of cricket's bone, the lash of film, her wagoner a small gray-coated gnat, not half so big as a round little worm, pricked from the lazy finger of a maid. Her chariot is an empty hazelnut, made by the joiner squirrel or old grub. Time out, oh, mind the fairies' coachmakers, and in the stay she gallops, night by night, through lovers' brains, and they dream of love. Oh, her courtiers' knees, and they dream on curtsies straight. Oh, her lawyers' fingers, and they stray on kisses dream, which oft the angry mad with blisters plagues, because their breast with sweetmeats tainted are. Sometimes she driveth over a courtier's nose, and then dreams of he smelling at a suit. And sometimes comes she with a tith's pigtail, tickling a parson's nose as he lies asleep. And sometimes she driveth over a soldier's neck, and then dreams he of cutting foreign throats, of breaches, ambuscados, Spanish blades, of healths 5 fathom deep, at which Anon drums in his ear, at which he starts and wakes, and thus being frightened, swears a prayer or two, and sleeps again. This is that very Mab that plats the manes of horses in the night, and bakes elf-locks in foul, sluttish hairs, at once untangled, much misfortune bods. This is the hag that when maids lie on their backs, and presses them and learns them first to bear, making them women of good carriage. This is she.
I'm Chloe Bilstad. I'm in 8th grade, and I will be playing the role of Celia.
I'm Anna Ashman. I'm in 8th grade, and I will be playing the role of Rosalind.
I'm Mira Slotkin. I'm in 7th grade, and I'll be playing the part of Touchstone.
And we are doing a scene from As You Like It by Shakespeare.
I pray thee, Rosalind, sweet my coz, be merry.
Dear Celia, I show more mirth than I am mistress of, and were you yet our merrier? Unless you could teach me to forget a banished father, you must not learn me to remember an extraordinary pleasure.
You know my father hath no child but I, nor none is like to have, and truly, when he dies, thou shalt be his heir. For what he hath taken away from my father preforce, I will render thee again, in affection. By my honor I will, and when I break that oath, let me turn monster. Therefore, my sweet Rose, my dear Rose, be merry.
What shall be our sport then?
Let us sit and mock good fortunes, that her gifts may henceforth be bestowed equally.
I would we could do so, for her benefits are mightfully misplaced, and the bountiful blind woman doth most mistake in her gifts to a woman.
'Tis true, for though she makes fair, she scarce makes honest, and though she makes honest, she makes very ill-favoredly.
Nay, now thou goest from fortune's office to nature's. Fortune's reigns in the gifts of the world, not in the lineaments of nature.
For always the dullness of the fool is the sharpener of the wits. How now, wit, whither wander you?
Mistress, you must come away to your father.
Were you made the messenger?
No, but by my honor, I was bid to come for you.
Where learned you that oath, fool?
Of a certain knight that swore by his honor that they were good pancakes, and swore by his honor that the mustard was not. But I'll stand to it, that the pancakes were not and the mustard was good, and yet the knight was not forsworn.
How prove you that in the great heap of your knowledge?
Aye, marry, now unmuzzle your wisdom.
Stand both forth you now, stroke your beards, and swear to me that I am a knave.
Yes, sir, thou art a knave. By our beards, if we had them, thou art.
By my knavery, if I had it, then it were. But if you swear by that that is not, you are not forsworn, no more than a knight swearing by his honor, for he never had any, or if he did, he'd sworn it away before he ever saw those pancakes or that mustard.
Pray thee, who is that thou meanest?
One that old Frederick, your father, loves.
My father's love is enough to honor him, enough. Speak no more of him, you'll be whipped for taxation one of these days.
More pity that the fools do speak wisely than wise men do speak foolishly.
By my troth, thou sayest true. For since the little wit that fools have was silenced, the little foolery that wise men have makes a great show.
Hi, I am Luna Crumbrone, and I play the role of Rosalind.
I'm Corinne Yakabuchi, and I play the role of Orlando.
And just to mention, in this scene, in some parts of the play, Rosalind disguises herself as a man and goes off into the forest confronting the man she is in love with. I will speak to him, like a saucy lackey, and under the guise play the knave with him. Do you hear, Forester?
I hear very well, thank you.
I pray you, what is it o'clock?
You should ask me what time of day. There is no clock in the forest.
Time travels in divers paces with divers persons. I'll tell you who time ambles withal, who time trots withal, who he gallops withal, and who he stands still withal.
I prithee, who doth he trot withal?
He trots hard with a young maid between the contract of her marriage and the date is solemnized.
Who ambles time withal?
With the priest that lacks Latin and a rich man that hath not the gout. For one sleeps easily because he cannot study, and the other lives merrily because he feels no pain.
Who doth he gallop withal?
With a thief to the gallows. For though he go as softly as foot can fall, he still thinks himself too soon there.
Who stayeth time still withal?
With lawyers on vacation, for they sleep between term and term, and then they do not perceive how time moves.
Where dwell you, pretty youth?
Here in the skirts of the forest, with a shepherdess, my sister.
Are you native of this place? Your accent is something finer than you could purchase in so removed a dwelling.
I've been told so of many, but indeed an old religious uncle of mine taught me to speak, and I thank God I am not a woman, to be touched with so many giddy offenses as tax their whole sex withal. You look poorly.
I am one that is so love-shaked. I pray you, do you have the remedy?
You have not his marks. I know what it is to be a man in love, but you have not his marks.
What are his marks?
A lean cheek, which you have not. A blue eye and sunken, which you have not. An unquestionable spirit, which you have not. A beard neglected, which you have not, but I pardon you for that. Then your hose should be ungartered, your bonnet unbanded, your sleeves uncuffed, your shoes untied, and everything about you demonstrating a careless desolation. But you are no such man. You claim to be in love, but truly you are not.
Fair youth, I would I could make thee believe I'd love.
Me believe it? But, in good sooth, are you he who writes the verses on the trees, wherein Rosalind is much admired?
I swear to thee, youth, by the white hand of Rosalind, I am he, that unfortunate he.
But are you truly as much in love as your rhymes speak?
Neither rhyme nor reason can express how much.
Love is merely madness, yet I can cure it by counsel.
Did you ever cure any so?
Yes, one. And in this manner, he was to imagine me his love, his mistress, and I set him every day to woo me, and thus I cured him. And in this fashion I will take upon me to wash your liver as clean as there will not be one spot of love within it.
I would not be cured, youth.
You would if you would but call me Rosalind and come to this wood every day at this hour and woo me.
Aye, by the faith of my love, I will, with all my heart, good youth.
Nay, you must call me your Rosalind. Well, until tomorrow then.
Turn it off.
Hello, I'm Ved Joshi, and I'm gonna do the Jake's monologue, All the World's Stage, from As You Like It. All the world's stage, all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. One man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first, the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms. And then the whining schoolboy, with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail, unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. And then the soldier, full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, with fair round belly and good cape and line, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, with full of wise saws and modern instances, and so he plays his part. The sixth age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose, well saved, a whirl too wide, for his shrunk shank and his big, manly voice, turning again towards childish treble, pipes and whistles in a sound. Last scene of all, that ends this strange, eventful history, is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything.
Before you leave, we have a tradition, and you've shared your names, and some of you your grades, and it sounds like there's quite a few 8th graders. So if we could I'll hand you the microphone, and if you could just do first name and what high school is going to benefit from your amazing talents, either next year or in the years following.
I'm Anna, and I'm either going to Ballard High School or Center School.
I'm Chloe, and I'm going to Ingram High School.
I'm Griffin, and I'm either going to go to Ballard High School or Lincoln.
I'm 6th grade. That aren't going next year, if you know where you're going in 2 years or 3 years.
I don't.
Don't yet. Well, just tell us your first name, just as a reminder.
I'm Mira. I'm going to go to Ballard High.
I'm Corinne.
I'm Luna.
I'm Ved.
Thank you again for sharing with us, entertaining us at the beginning of our meeting. At this point in our meeting, I will turn it over to Superintendent Juneau for her comments. The floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Happy New Year to everybody. 2019 is unbelievable. Tonight's comments will be a slight change from how I regularly do them with all the slideshow and stuff, because there's a few things anyway. But first, I would just like to introduce Diane DeBacker. She is our new Chief Academic Officer, and she has just an introduction statement for all of you. So, Dr. DeBacker.
Perfect. Thank you, Superintendent Juneau, for allowing me part of your time to visit with the board and with the community tonight. It is my absolute pleasure to be in Seattle Public Schools. This is my 3rd full day, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be here, and most importantly, how impressed I am with Seattle Public Schools, with the staff that I've met here, with the team, and with the enthusiasm that I have sensed from everybody about what's happening in Seattle Public Schools. You have such a rich history of what's happened, and you have a great plan forward, and I am so excited to be part of it. Just a little bit about who I am. I'm a native Kansan. I drove from Kansas beginning last Wednesday. It was a 3.5-day drive with my husband, who had a horrible cold, gave me that cold, but I'm finally over it. Beautiful country that we traveled through. And we made the decision to make the final trek into Seattle on Saturday morning because I wanted to see the beautiful scenery as we came over the Snoqualmie Pass. I didn't pronounce it right, so I apologize for that. But I'm so glad that we made the decision to come in during the daylight. My background is I'm a lifelong educator. I've been in education for 36 plus years, and I jokingly say that I have done nearly everything in education except drive the bus and be the cafeteria lady. And I would be happy to do either of those if given the opportunity here in Seattle. I am here in Seattle for 3 reasons. The very first reason is because of your superintendent. I had the privilege of serving with Denise, with Superintendent Juneau, as Commissioner of Education when I was Commissioner in Kansas, and she was Commissioner or Secretary in Montana. And in a room full of 50 commissioners or secretaries of education from across the United States, as you can imagine, there are always some egos in the room of those individuals. But Denise was always the voice of reason. She was always the voice that as we were discussing issues that would happen across the United States in terms of education, she was the one who would bring us back to reality and ask us why we were making those decisions. So the opportunity to work with you, Superintendent Juneau, as a very strong leader and in a system that has a very, very bright future and a wonderful history, I'm so happy to be here. My second reason for here is because of Seattle Public Schools. I've watched you from afar for many years, and I am excited about the progress that you've made, and I want to be part of the progress that you will make from this point on. And the third reason is very personal. Third reason is all about my dad. And I'll tell this story, and a few of you have heard it before. But my dad was in the Navy. He was a Seabee. And after he had spent his time in the Navy, he ended up here in Seattle for a little bit of time, where he was working as a welder in the shipyard. My dad was a very tiny man, and so he could shimmy down into the holes and he could get into the tight places and do the welding. And he talked about his time here in Seattle and how he rented a house from a woman who was very strict. She allowed no smoking and no drinking, and there was a curfew for him even as an adult to be in the house. And so for me, Seattle is a way of bringing me home. It's a way of me connecting with my father, who passed away about a year ago. And so those are my 3 reasons for being here. They're all very, very genuine. A little bit about me personally. I've been married for 36 and a half years. I have a wonderful husband who has supported me through many different crazy opportunities that I've had, from being in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates to being in Kansas and doing some fantastic jobs in education. So my husband, I put him on the plane this morning. I know it sounds like it's a 2-year-old, and I put him on the plane, but I escorted him to the airport this morning for him to travel back to Kansas to get our cat out of the kennel, who's been there since last Wednesday. I just received a note from him. He successfully retrieved the cat, and she has not clawed him to death, so that's good. I think that's enough about myself to get started. I am excited to be here as the Chief Academic Officer. Thank you for the opportunity, Superintendent Juneau. Thank you to the board for the opportunity, and I look forward to working with each of you in the coming months and years. Thank you.
Next, I just want to update everyone on where we are with the strategic plan. We start our second round of engagement this month. There is one more board work session and one more steering committee meeting as well. We still hope to have a draft plan at the end of February with intro and then action in March. And so it's on an aggressive timeline, but I think it's coming together really well. I just had a meeting with all the principals at the LLD, and there were some really good comments that came out of that. And so I'm excited to start rolling that out into community and see some of the comments that come out from that. This is our current engagement date, so this is a draft. I think one got finalized, another one got finalized today, and there's one that is pending. So this will be our community engagement dates for round 2, which will be really about strengthening and refining the priorities and the goals of the plan. We hold our first meeting like I said, with our principals, and they really did love the theory of action. And I know all of you have seen a draft of that as well. They love the intentionality of the plan and the idea that the plan was actually strategic, that we were honing in and really putting down on paper what we've been talking about so long as a district. The principals will share the draft plan with their staff. And so I'm, like I said, excited to share the plan with the community. I'm thankful for all the people who have contributed so far. The steering committee's come up with the great priorities, a great theory of action. So just really excited about that. And then the final thing that we have for superintendent comments is Jolynn Berge to share her board report this evening. Thank you, Chief Berge.
Good evening, Jolynn Berge, Chief Financial Officer. Got no clicker. You're gonna click? Okay. So we are going to talk about, this is a required report by board policy that we come and do. So Audit and Finance Committee members have already seen this in the last A&F meeting. So it will be new for the other two board directors and for the public. We will talk about 17-18 very quickly. We have 4 funds. So we have a general fund where the majority of our dollars flow through, capital fund that we're familiar with as far as for building and construction, a very tiny debt service fund, and then an associated student body fund. So we do report monthly with our monthly financials to the Audit and Finance Committee, and the district's required F196 reporting to OSPI has been completed on time, certified. All of our documents, of course, are submitted on time and correctly. And so this presentation will meet our board requirements. So as we start, we'll talk about this slide that we'll spend a little bit of time on, just a couple slides that will go into more detail. This slide shows 17-18, the adopted budget. That's the first column. And then the actual year-end amounts. And the 3 numbers that we have circled in red, I'm just going to call out the differences between budget and actual, right? So we had revenues estimated at $808 million. Our revenues came in slightly higher at $820 million. So there was $11.8 million of revenue above what we'd budgeted. And then our expenditures were less than we'd budgeted. So that's exactly the right direction that you want to be. You want to budget your revenues and your expenditures low, and you want both of those actual numbers to come in. You want revenues to come in higher than you budgeted, and you want expenditures to come in slightly less than you budgeted. That resulted in an ending fund balance of about $114 million, which tracks with how we ended the prior year. So we can look at, this is going to show us revenues. And I'll actually go on to the next slide. This is the numbers, but this is a picture, I think, which does better justice to the information. So you can see that our state apportionment dollars in 17-18, there was quite a significant jump up from 16-17, and that had to do with the increased funding that was provided by the legislature for McCleary. So you can see that state revenue is about 46% in 17-18 of our total dollars. The next biggest component of our revenue is local levy, and that is 26.5%. Now that number will be dropping because of the levy switch that they have done. So they've lifted up state apportionment and they've lowered levy authority. So we're going to be seeing that state number increase and that local levy number go down as far as percentage-wise. We'll still have a whole pie with 100%. After that is state grants, and you can see oftentimes people ask us a lot of questions about federal grants. Well, for Seattle Public Schools, federal grants is only 5% of our total revenue, but it entails probably 30% of our effort and our work as far as meeting compliance requirements for those things. And then you can see local non-tax or fees that we collect, like child nutrition fees. And other non-tax or other revenues are like city levy dollars and other grant dollars that we would receive. So the expenditures by object, again, you can see that we tracked really steadily as far as 16-17 to 17-18. Our personnel expenditures remained at 84% of our total expenditures. And that's right in line with what other districts are experiencing. So typically a district has somewhere between 80 and 87% of their total expenditures are related to personnel. So that's salaries and benefits for staffing. And then after that, the next largest category is purchase services, i.e. contracts. So our transportation contract would be the largest contract that we have sitting in that category. Supplies are things that are purchase orders, things of that nature. You can see travel, we're at 0.1% for travel expenditures in our district. And then capital outlay are those items that are $5,000 or more. So there's a difference in the accounting world. You categorize things as capital outlay if they cost you $5,000 more per item. So we have very few of those expenditures. Two things that come to mind for capital expenditures in 17-18 were refrigerator trucks. We had to buy 2 new refrigerator trucks. So you can see that our total expenditures were $816 million. Prior year were $752 million. Again, tracking well as far as our expenditures increase when we get additional revenues. A lot of that increase, percentage-wise, really goes to staffing. Moving on, this is that picture. We won't talk about that in detail. Then another category that we often look at, that we often get questions about, is ending fund balance. So ending fund balance in 16-17, that's how much money did you end with during the year. It's not available dollars necessarily. That's why we break out these categories to explain $114 million, gosh, do you have a financial issue in this district with an ending fund balance of $114 million? Well, most of that, almost all of it, is assigned to some other purpose. So there is non-spendable inventory. So our food commodities that we're required to book are our inventory items. And then we have grants. So if we have grants that we have received prepayment for that we haven't spent all the money, those dollars are held aside just for those grants. That's the only thing we can spend that on. You're familiar, during our budget work sessions, we have a lot of discussion about the Economic Stabilization Fund. We ended the year with that 3% or so. It's $24.5 million. The assigned fund balance we'll talk about in more detail in just a moment. That's the largest category. And then unassigned is really unrestricted, unassigned fund balance dollars of $3.7 million. And the prior year, we'd ended with about 4.2. So if we move on to the next slide, we're going to see really what makes up assigned fund balance. So assigned fund balance is things that we're putting money aside for, earmarked for a certain purpose, or school carry forwards. So schools have both self-help accounts, they have grant dollars or PTA donation dollars that they get to carry over in their own school account. So that's what those items are. Central carry forward has the same kind of thing. So it's items in central office budgets that people carry forward that belong to a certain department. So for example, we have surplus sales of assets, and those dollars are held in a carry forward account for central office. That's one example. And then as you're aware, when we work through our budget work sessions, we have had a lot of money that we have been dedicating and saving up for a rainy day that we knew that we were dedicating to either the 18-19 or the 19-20 budget, and those are outlined for you there. And then the last item that we have to hold money for that I'll speak to are legal settlements. So that's a required component of fund balance, where if we have legal settlements that we think that there is a likely outcome that we have to pay out money for, we hold money for that. It's not a guarantee that we will pay those out, but it's simply a placeholder for any lawsuits that are currently in progress. Next slide. That would conclude the general fund information that I'm sharing with you tonight. We'll move on. I would like to note that on slide 4 and on slide 7, there is a typo. Total expenditures on slide 4 is accurate, so I think maybe you'll hear about that in public comment, so that's been noted, and we'll make that correction. So the capital fund, this shows beginning fund balance as adopted by the budget, and then how we actually came in year to date for the close of the 17-18 school year. So we had a beginning fund balance that came in higher. We started with a better fund balance than we'd anticipated. Again, generally speaking, as you budget, you anticipate lower revenue than you may receive, and you anticipate spending every dollar that you're budgeting. And that doesn't generally happen, especially in the capital projects fund. So we have ended the fund balance in the Capital Projects Fund with $46 million. Again, a healthy fund balance. We had been accelerating some projects, and so the fund balance was a number that we have been watching closely in the Capital Projects Fund, but we don't have any cash flow issues at this point in time. All of those accelerated projects like Arbor Heights, we've worked through that timeline, and we're into a position where we know that we're going to have a positive fund balance and have enough cash flow. Moving on, debt service fund. This is a transfer from the Capital Projects Fund. The only debt that we have are the outstanding bonds on the John Stanford Center. So we make those total payments. This last year was about $2.5 million. Next slide is our ASB fund. So these are student directed. These are for classes, clubs, sports, and other activities at schools. The schools set those budgets themselves, and the students have to approve those expenditures at the school level before they roll up to the district level. So they estimate their own revenues, they do their own fundraising, and they're in control of a lot of their own expenditures. So this is their activity. They again have a healthy fund balance, so we're on track with them as well. That would conclude my presentation, and I would be happy to take comments.
Director Mack.
I apologize that I don't know this number or this the answer to this question off the top. I probably should. But on slide 6, the 14% of state grants, we have state apportionment and then state grants separated out. And just for clarification, can you clarify why we have state apportionment and then what those grants are that are separate?
Yeah, so there's certain grant items that come, they don't come on the state apportionment schedule, they're considered state grants. The biggest one that I could highlight is LAP. So the Learning Assistance Program comes to us as a state grant. The Transitional Bilingual Program also comes to us as a grant. So there's certain funds that the state has identified for certain programs that we're required to categorize as state grants.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, we're moving through the agenda at a blistering pace here. And this brings us to where, really? Wow. Yeah, board committee reports. I'd like to invite directors to share any work that they've been doing or are doing or in preparation or with their committees. I'm looking for someone who'd like to open. Preview of the future. Director Mack.
Good evening. I didn't actually take notes, so I'm going to wing it, but I do have the agenda. Operations met prior to the previous board meeting in December, so I won't recap that. Our next meeting is actually tomorrow. The agenda, I believe, has been posted, and we're going to be working on the committee work plan for the year, as well as getting our financial budget report, talking about community engagement for the levies. By the way, there's a bunch of great community presentation meetings going on. They're posted on our website and on social media. And I encourage, if you'd like to learn about the levies, to attend one of those. There was one last night. We are also going to be talking further about capacity management, policy H13. And getting a verbal report on the capital projects. There's a semi-annual report process that we have, as well as hearing about what's going on with our Playground Redevelopment Fund, and touching base on whether or not we should consider becoming a certified body for the GCCM process in the construction process. So welcome to come to our meeting tomorrow. It's 4:30 to 6:30, right next door. I also wanted to say I'm grateful to be appointed the chair again this year, and we've shifted who's actually on the committee, so I'm saying goodbye to Director Pinkham. I've really enjoyed working with you on the committee, and welcoming Director DeWolf. And Director Patu is going to be continuing forward. think that's all.
Director Pinkham?
Consiglio, thank you. ANF, there wasn't much new to report since the last regular board meeting, but I did get the feedback from our internal auditor and Jillian Berge, and her assistant forwarded me the minutes, our draft agenda for our next meeting. Andrew Medina didn't have anything new to share with me since our last meeting, so I'll just go right now to our planned meeting for Monday, January 14th. We don't have any bars coming to be introduced at our meeting. It's more informational things coming forward to the ANF committee. And so we'll just go through our regular agenda with monthly budget updates and our committee annual work plan. And our new members include myself, Jill Geary, and Eden. You're still with us on? Yes. And I know Jill expressed some interest to add to the ANF agenda. Then I shared it with Jillian. I haven't checked to see if Jillian responded, but it might come under our committee annual work plan, the comments that she has. So those are the only updates I have for ANF since we're starting out the new year. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back.
Very good. I'll tee this off for curriculum instruction, and just looking back a little bit in the past 3 years as chair of CNI, I feel like a huge amount of work has been done. And I won't go through it in detail, but there's been work around instructional philosophy policy. There's been work around the assessment policy, some very bedrock things that have, I think, helped the district move forward in our educational system. I'm super excited to be handing the chair position to Jill Geary, and she's kindly allowing me to stay on the committee so I can heckle. Would you like to highlight what's coming up next Tuesday at your first CNI meeting?
Yes. So honored to have the opportunity to chair curriculum instruction, and with our new chief instructional officer who I had a chance to meet today. That was, I'm excited to work with her, and it'll be fresh. We have new faces. We can think about how we want to do it, and that is an exciting opportunity. But we do have a pretty full agenda keyed up, a lot of the same things that we've been working on for a while, but really important. A board action report will be coming on the approval of courses with new content as defined by superintendent procedure. And so we have spent a lot of time discussing about how we're going to define the coursework that is being presented in our schools. I know it's of great interest to a lot of people, that which we are going to define our own curriculum, and that which we will leave to the principals to supplement as they see appropriate for their schools. So that will be the one action item we're talking about. We have our standing agenda items around our SMART goals, our standing SMART goals, 24 credit, secondary school revisioning, and instructional materials. And then we do have a number of policies that we've been working on for quite a while. And so anybody who has been following, we continue to move those forward. And that's equitable access to programs and services, performance management, selection of instructional materials, and electronic resources and use of the internet. And I know different communities find those particular policies very important, and so that's an opportunity to stay abreast of that. Special attention items continue to be advanced learning, CTE, and curriculum and instruction policy committee work plan. So I look forward to chairing the committee this year and coming up with a new plan and, moving forward on all this great work. Thank you.
On behalf of my colleague, President Leslie Harris, I will tee up a couple things about executive committee. There was not an executive committee meeting since our last board meeting, so I'll just restate a little bit some of the things that are going on, and then give Director Harris an opportunity to share out if she wants to from her esteemed spot behind the microphone there. Couple of things that I want to bring to folks' attention. We're going to be working on the adoption of 2019 board goals and objectives, and that's something that's actively being worked by the board and by the executive committee. We'll be looking at retreat agendas in March and June, upcoming agendas and for those board retreats, so we can spend more time together. And also finalizing what are our oversight work sessions for the upcoming year. So those are some of the three really important things. And then I'll open it up. Director Harris, did you want to add anything to that?
Thank you. Thank you, Vice President Burke. Can you hear me? Okay, terrific. So the next executive session is next Thursday, not tomorrow, but a week from Thursday at 3 o'clock. And one of the things that we'll need to do is to change the timing of those executive committee meetings, and we're still talking about when that will happen, because at least 2 of the 3 of us have other work commitment conflicts. So stay tuned for that. The rich conversation we had in the last executive committee meeting that Director Mack was so kind to sit in on was about getting the community engagement standing committee set up. And because of the reorganization, that's moved around a bit, and we're looking forward to that rich discussion. The other is back again to that very, very difficult topic about additional funding for schools. We've started collecting data, and the additional funding, not levy dollars, but PTSA, booster clubs, and foundation dollars, is quite shocking and to be continued in part of our race and equity conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, President Harris. So this brings us to student comments. Unfortunately, we don't have a student speaker joining us. Oh, sorry. Wait, there's more? Legislative. Thank you. And city.
Right, city. So very briefly, reporting out about our legislative activities. Not a lot to share. The legislative session hasn't started yet. It will start in a couple weeks, but I attended the WASDA Legislative Committee meeting, and on Friday and Saturday, 2 full days where we talk about how we're going to be engaging on the Day on the Hill. All 3 all 3 school associations, the Superintendent's Association, the Business Association, and the School Board Association, WASDA, WASBO, and WASA, it's alphabet soup, get together early next month. I'm sorry, I don't have the date on top of me, where we have a conference and we all visit with our legislators. So we work on kind of coordinating that, and WASDA's legislative priorities now are posted online, very pretty. They align very much with Seattle Public Schools legislative priorities. I also dropped a copy of this in everybody's box, so you have the pretty copy. And I just want to kind of point out that WASDA's legislative priority, one of them, along with many of the other associations, includes restoring access to local funding for local needs and holding districts harmless. That there's a complete recognition that the McCleary fix, in quotes, did not actually fix things, and that we still need increased access to local levy dollars. So I look forward to talking further with our legislators in the legislative session beginning, and encourage my colleagues to touch base with me and with Director Geary on how to get engaged.
Yep, I don't have anything to report from City Liaison role. Folks are on break, so hopefully within next month we'll have our regular meetings back on schedule and be able to report back.
Okay, thank you. So now, no other committees or special topics? Looking around, okay, we're good. We don't have a student speaker joining us, but we will have a student from Interagency Academy speaking during public testimony tonight. So we're looking forward to that. We've now reached the consent portion of tonight's agenda. May I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Yes.
Are we going to request for anything to remove first, or?
That would be after we move in second.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
I second the motion.
Approval of the consent agenda has been moved and seconded. Do directors have any items they would like to remove from the consent agenda? Director Pinkham.
I'm requesting to remove item 3 since it's been updated since introduction, so we can have hopefully some transparency. There's some questions I had on it as well.
Okay. Item 3 has been removed from the consent agenda. I am looking for a New motion for an amended consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda as amended.
And I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda passes as amended. So now for items removed from the consent agenda, we're going to defer until after public testimony so that that particular item can be voted on again or could be voted on individually, sorry, I'm trying to keep it together here. This brings us to board comments. So we've reached the public testimony component, but the time doesn't start officially until 5:30. So we have approximately 20 minutes. And if directors would like to share some comments, I'm going to take chair's prerogative and also open it up to people if they, although resolutions from a board have a very special and formal meeting, if there are some New Year's wishes or hopes and dreams that you'd like to put out, you're welcome to weave those into your comments or not. Anyone like to go first? Director DeWolf, you're holding on the mic.
Thank you, Director Burke. First, as a citizen of the Chippewa Cree Nation of Rockyville, Montana, I also want to recognize that we are on stolen Indigenous land. I'm honored to live, work, and serve here in the Coast Salish territories in the city of Chief South, who is a descendant of the Suquamish, the Muckleshoot, and the Duwamish. Thank you to Directors Burke, Richard Best, and Stephen Goldblatt of the BEX Oversight Committee for a really great meeting we had over holiday winter break. Continuing to have really great discussions around community workforce agreements, and talks a lot about centering student voice and racial equity, and so those conversations will be continuing, and we'll look to Director Mack and Burke, as well as President Harris, in kind of planning our next steps for those conversations, so there will be more information coming soon. Also did want to mention each year, actually every other year in odd years, the federal government via HUD requires that Continuum of Cares across the country do an observational count of the people experiencing homelessness. I'm here today to ask if there are any volunteers for our annual point-in-time count of people experiencing homelessness. Please visit allhomekc.org. We still need a lot of volunteers. This is really critical work in understanding the issue here in our city, and gives us some really great data. The other thing I wanted to mention was that tomorrow, at least on the hill that I live on, tomorrow at 7 p.m. at Mon Lake Elementary, we'll be having another levies information night, and I really encourage folks to come out and learn more about the importance of those levies in our work here in Seattle Public Schools, because as we know, the state has not fully funded public education. I also want to mention that on Saturday at 3 p.m. at El Centro de la Raza, we're going to have a really great an event around ethnic studies here at Seattle Public Schools, and encourage folks to come out, learn more about it, give feedback, and ensure that our curriculum reflects communities' needs and concerns. That's all I have to say. Yeah, it was kind of a quiet winter break. Thanks.
Would anyone else like to follow that? Director Pinkham, thank you.
Is my mic live? Doesn't sound like it. Okay, all right. Good evening and thank you. Just want to again welcome everyone back with the new year in 2019. That just prime odd number year just seems strange, but we'll make it a fantastic year. All right. Given that for some of us this is going to be, are we going to get back on the campaign trail or what are we going to do? Those decisions will have to be made. I don't have much to share, but again, just wanted to welcome everyone back. Thank you to the Salmon Bay and their presentation. I just remember reading those Shakespeare books and when I was back in high school and a little bit in college, and it's good to see that even in middle school we're getting our students exposed to his writings. And welcome to Diane DeBacker. Am I saying that correctly? Thank you, and welcome to the Seattle School District. Hope that trip from Kansas wasn't too bad for 3 days. But again, welcome. Also want to announce that the University of Washington will be having its winter powwow Saturday, January 26th in the Hub. Grand entries at 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. So please come out and join the students at the University of Washington. And this is the way they're primer to prepare for their spring powwow. Also, I'd like to announce again that Urban Aid Education Alliance does meet Tuesdays and Thursdays at Robert Eagle Staff Middle School and Licton Springs K through 8. If you want to come out there, 6 to 8:30 generally, and you'll see signs out there as far as which building they'll be in. So just please follow the signs and come and enjoy some good food as well as some cultural activities and also some tutoring and stuff to support our students. That is all I have for today, and still got 15 minutes to kill. Thank you. Katsiya.
Director Geary, it's all yours.
Happy New Year. Yes, I've spent a lot of time over the break. I really stepped back from everything, but spent a lot of time thinking about how I want to spend this, my final year on the school board. And just reflecting on so many of the exciting things that have happened in the 3 years that I've been here. And I just want to make sure that whatever I contribute now is going to continue on along with that work. So I'm excited to be on Audit and Finance and to hopefully work with the Seattle Council, PTSA, in terms of creating transparency around all the public funding sources that go into our buildings. And I think that that is an issue that has become urgent, and we hear a lot about it, not only here from people testifying, but out in the greater world and in our buildings. And so I just think that it's an exciting opportunity to look for ways to identify what those funding sources are, and also look for ways that we can make it more equitable, because I know our population is looking for opportunities to have the money be available more equitably, and we need to help them create that structure. I would really like to, so at the end of the year, we heard from several families that the programs that promote racial segregation within our schools causes a great amount of dissonance and discord amongst students within the schools themselves. And it is harmful and it is negative. And I think that we, the board, have to recognize that. It is atrocious to hear mothers come and testify that their children come home saying that they are stupid because they have been put in what is clearly to them been defined as the stupid class. Now, that may not be true from the building's perspective, but if that is the message that those students are getting based upon the racial segregation that they see within the school and the labels on the classes that are being allowed to them, then that is unacceptable. So I'm going to work on some way to create a policy from the board, and I'm only one person, so it will require that we as a board come around this, but I'm going to attempt to work on something that will prohibit the maintenance or creation of programs that result in that type of racial segregation without any demonstration that is eliminating the opportunity and or the achievement gap. So that is an exciting thing for me to think about working on. And I know that's a big deal, but I think it's super important. Another thing that is important to me is looking into the issue of our least restrictive environment statistics. I know at one point Washington State was one of the worst in the nation with regard to inclusion around special education. And Seattle Public Schools wasn't doing well. Now, I haven't looked at those statistics for several years, but I do want to look into that. And then to the extent that we can find other urban districts that are doing better around inclusion, that we look to see if, one, those statistics are indeed truthful, and if they are doing something that we would see as being relevant to our population and our schools, and see if we can learn from who may be doing it better. So those are some of the things that I hope to work on. And then, of course, as we're trying to determine the future of our high schools, I think that's always exciting. And I'm going to continue to do what I can to look for ways that our high schools will meet the needs of all of our learners and create a variety of settings that will be exciting and relevant and allow our city to participate and share their resources and their opportunities with our kids. So I'm really looking forward to this year.
Director Mack, followed by Director Harris as a heads up.
I don't tend to do the intentions or New Year's resolutions because I'm so practical. I'm like, well, if I don't want to make a promise that I can't keep. But what I like to hold with me at all times is coming to challenges and problems with the resolution that we can come together and find solutions. And in this case, in my role as the school board director and chair of operations, we faced a lot of challenging issues around our buildings, enrollment, and I think there are positive, non-divisive solutions that we can find together. And so I resolve to do my best to make sure that in every situation we are completely engaged in community, listening to all sides, and finding the win-win-win solution for our students and for our community and for Seattle. So I guess that is a aspirational statement, but so I have my community meeting coming up this Saturday at the Magnolia Library at 11 o'clock. Everyone is welcome. You don't have to be in District 4. You don't have to be in my district to come and talk to me. I also want to give a shout out to my fellow school board directors because it's School Board Recognition Month this month. Yay! Next, okay, excellent, thank you. And welcome everyone back to school. For me, it was so lovely to have such a long time with my husband and children and got some time in the snow. And I turned off the computer for days on end, and it was revitalizing. And it was also lovely when everybody went off to work and school and had a little time to myself again. So thank you to Salmon Bay and theater. Theater really is important. I think being able to speak in front of others is such a critical skill to learn, and theater does that. I also want to welcome Mr. Fred Podesta. He's not here yet, but he has been hired, and he's coming, I think, on the 21st. I'm super excited to have our a new chief operations officer. Am I got the title right? I do. And you know, my colleague in the operations work. So super excited about that, and I'll hold any other comments until after public comments.
President Harris, would you like to share anything today?
Okay, I guess I'm up. My New Year's resolution, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, terrific. My New Year's resolution will be to continue the good teamwork we have on this board of directors and with our staff, and to be even more proactive than we are, more accountable, and more transparent. And big welcome to Dr. DeBecker and to Mr. Podesta. Can't wait till he joins us. We are assembling a heck of a team. Now we need to figure out how to communicate with each other with the transparency and the elegance, and hopefully with the sense of joie de vivre, because we're doing such important work every day, all day, and we need to remember that. And we need to remember that the kids come first. My next community meeting is January 19th, 50-50 chance for lasagna, Delridge Library, 3 to 5. Welcome you all. Thank you. I'll withhold my comments until after public testimony.
Okay.
You're up, Rick.
Thank you. I will put a couple things on there. Also, welcome Dr. DeDecker. It was nice to Decker. Get the name right. It'll take me 2 or 3 times, but it was great to meet you today, and I'm super excited to hear about your personal passion and experiences around CTE programs, which I think weaves in really well with a lot of the work that we've been doing in our systems also. Thanks to everyone who's joining us in the audience or from home today, and I hope your New Year's off to a good start as well. My last couple of weeks since our last board meeting has been pretty quiet in terms of school board, and it's been really blissful to take a little bit of a break. Pretty much the only real little bit of email work and the meeting that Director DeWolf mentioned around our community workforce agreements and trying to understand how to create those partnerships, working with our staff, Richard Best inside Capitol and Stephen Goldblatt of the University of Washington. And I have no community meetings set yet for January. I have a couple of work activities that I'm trying to weave in so that I can really lock down my calendar for January, and we'll get all of that set shortly. In thinking about kind of what I would aspire to and what I hope that we will aspire to in 2019, it's really to proceed. It's sort of like the way Director Mack, we're going to merge everybody together here, but to proceed with empathy and resolve. And really the empathy is something that the more I do this work on the school board, the more I realize that you can aspire to walk in somebody else's shoes, but you really have to talk with them, engage with them, connect with them to understand what their shoes even look like before you can even try. And that when I think of trying to make decisions with empathy, that's really to try to do that, to try to understand the position people are coming from. The other one is the resolve, to have that resolve, to do the hard work, to ask the hard questions, to take on those challenges, be really critical of ourselves, and to do right by our students. Because I think we can continue to push, continue to be better. So I'm excited to do that this year also. And it looks like we have about 5 or 6 minutes before public testimony starts formally, and because we're rule followers here, we won't start until 5:30. So I'm going to take a brief recess. Please stay close. We'll reconvene promptly at 5:30 for public testimony. All directors back to the dais, please. Okay, back in session. As we've now reached 5:30 p.m., we will next go to public testimony. The rules for public testimony are on the screen, and I would ask that speakers are respectful of those rules. I would note that the board does not take public comments on items related to personnel or individually named staff. The majority of the speaker's time must be spent on the topic they've indicated they wish to speak about. If you're not speaking to your topic, I will politely ask you to speak to your topic. I'd also like to note that each speaker has a 2-minute speaking time. When the 2 minutes have ended, please conclude your remarks. If you don't conclude your remarks, I will also ask you to terminate your remarks. And thank you so much. Ms. Scheck, will you read off the roll call, or the testimony speakers, please?
First up for public testimony, we have Alexandria Rodriguez, followed by Chris Jackins, and then Alex Zimmerman.
Hi. How are you guys? Okay. I have a piece of paper so that I won't go over time. Okay. So first off, I want to introduce myself. My name is Alexandria Rodriguez. I was a student. I am a student at Interagencies Academy. I want to speak to you for young people who don't have homes, parents, and have no support and are fighting to keep into school. And graduate and make a difference in their lives. That's really whose behalf I'm here to speak on. Those are the students that matter to me. The ones that don't have the stability, don't have the support at home, and come to school and get that support from the teachers and the people around them. I am and I was one of those kids, as I said. Donald Felder, I don't know if you guys know who Donald Felder is. If you don't, that's a shame. He found me October of my sophomore year and brought me to Interagency and said that this was going to be my new home, and it was. And from there, teachers took me under their wing, and like never before, they really got to know me. They got to know my dislikes, my likes. They got to know how angry I was, too. When I first got there, I was transitioning out of foster care. So I had a lot of anger. I didn't want to accept the help that was given to me. I didn't see, that people were just trying to help me. I didn't see better for myself. It felt insurmountable. I struggled with addiction, my home life, math, and those were the things that I also ran away from and fought hard not to face. With the help of the staff, more like family members at Interagency, I saw it through, and it became mind over matter. I started at Southeast. I learned about my addiction at the Recovery High School, and I made great progress at Alder Academy. I found help with school, work, and found a new me. As I move forward, and as you guys move forward with the business of this school board meeting, keep us in mind. Us, the ones who aren't always eager to speak, us, the ones who fight to get up and go to school in the morning, us, the ones who have very little support, and protect the funding that supports the kids like me. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Chris Jackins, Box 84063, Seattle 98124. On Magnolia Elementary boundary changes, 2 points. Number one, as proposed, this district project was not able to comply with the language in state law about not creating or aggravating racial imbalance. Number two, the board is being asked to give rubber stamp approval to racial imbalance. Please vote no. On the proposal to add $1.5 million to the Ingram project, the district report seems to imply that if the board votes no, the district could save $1.4 million by implementing the same work over a longer period of time. Please vote no. On the annual financial report for fiscal year 2017-2018, 5 points. Number one, the amount listed on page 4 for actual total expenditures does not seem to match the amount listed on page 7. There is a difference of some $3,000. I appreciate Ms. Berge addressing that earlier. Number two, on page 13, the report references the debt for the district headquarters. Number three, Rick Anderson, a longtime Seattle journalist, wrote multiple articles on the headquarters debt. One article from 2011 noted that the headquarters was, quote, being built in the wrong place at the wrong time for the wrong reasons, unquote. Number four, according to a December 29th newspaper article, Rick Anderson recently passed away. Number five, so thank you, Rick Anderson, for your good work. Thank you.
Next up, we have Alex Zimmerman, followed by Melissa Westbrook, and then Brian Terry.
Thank you. Hi. Happy New Year. My name is Alex Zimmerman, and I'm first time here. So a little bit, 10-20 seconds about who I am. I spent in school 20 years, teach student in university, but I'm very stupid. Yeah. You're talking about stupidity here? It's exactly what is I want to speak to. I'm very stupid because I come and talk about something what is I know more and better than you probably 100 times. So, situation right now very simple. I go for agenda number one, so we need to open a new territory for my understanding. How we can open a new territory with old rules? So I want a little bit deliver my opinion about rules, what is I see for 30 plus years, what is I live in Seattle in King Country, and about school, in children, in everything what is I see around. 2 minutes probably not enough, but don't worry. I come and speak for last 10 years more than 2,000 times from Tacoma to Everett, in Seattle Council, in everywhere, 1,000 and 1,000 times. So, guys, we need change rules. What does mean change rule? We need mean rules what has come before in America for 250 years ago. This you who make correction with everything, includes this. Where is you find this? Are you a corporation or government? What was last time, remember I told you about this limitation of freedom of speech? Everybody have right to speak. And what is you doing this? This is a pure fascism because you change American principle what is exists for 250 years. In this Seattle, I call Seattle a #1 fascist city in America because I have and my family have experience with fascism much closer. We go right now every day more and more and more. 2 minutes not enough, but don't worry. When I stay in life, I will come back. And told you guys, you doing something very dangerous and very bad. You bring fascism to life every day, more, more, more. So I speak right now to everybody who listen to me. Stop fascism. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's going to be a trick. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening. I wanted to talk about the bar for roofing repairs to be made in 2019. It only has 2 buildings, and yet Whitman Middle School reports that they have to use buckets to catch water from their leaky roof. There's money in BTA 4, and heck, there's still money in BTA 3. What is the capital emergency in Seattle schools if not a leaky roof? And Whitman is getting no new buildings, so the least that can be done is to fix the roof. Next, I again ask you to suspend the use of King County's Check Yourself survey. It is an untested tool. In its current form, not a single child has ever taken it. It asks intimate questions about students. Are they in therapy? Does someone drink at home? Do they go to religious services? What is odd about the screening tool is that it seems to be a lot more about what is happening at home than how the student is feeling. Again, I say to you that parents were not notified. King County may not care. They indicated as such to me in their emails, but you should. No PTA was asked about it, asked to tell their members. And of course, World School has no PTA. I'm supposing World School was chosen because their parents are immigrants who would have no idea this is happening. Not notifying parents goes against board policy on surveys. I still believe it violates the federal education law PPRA, but most of all, it is unethical to do this to students and parents without parental notification. Here's a question. How come it's okay to ask middle school students questions about what goes on in their homes without telling their parents about it, but the district won't tell parents what they're doing to children in their own schools? Why is it okay for you and it's not okay for the parents? You need to tell the parents. Every PTA president I contacted said, I know nothing about this. That's 4 out of 5 schools. Is that fair? Is that ethical? It is not. The Check Yourself survey of middle school students in 5 middle schools and World Schools needs to be suspended immediately. Thank you.
After Brian Terry, we will have Craig Seasholes, followed by Juanita Galloway.
Good evening. In our schools today, a white student is 20 times more likely than a black student to be identified as highly capable. This leads to segregated classrooms that send a clear message. White students are more capable and more deserving. This is institutional racism. District Policy 0030 and the WAC specifically prohibit this inequity. To bring our program into compliance, there are 2 basic rules it must follow. First, serve students from all backgrounds equitably and without de facto segregation. And second, never place a self-contained, highly capable classroom in a neighborhood school with different demographics. Our Advanced Learning Task Force is, right now, considering changes to the highly capable service model. Please, make it clear to them that any new service model must conform to these 2 basic rules. Eliminating institutional racism from our program will send a new message to our students. All of you are capable and deserving. Thank you.
Craig?
Good evening. Yes, I am a Seattleite born, partially educated in Seattle Public Schools. My name is Juanita Galloway, I'm sorry. Daughter of a Seattle Public School teacher, Virginia Galloway, who was one of the first black teachers in Seattle. My mother, so I grew up with education. I have 4 adult now sons who went through Seattle Public Schools. All 4 of them have advanced degrees now I'm proud to say. My concern now is my grandchildren. I have one grandchild in Seattle Public Schools at Genesee Elementary School, which happens to be one of the schools where my mother was a principal about 40 years ago. But I also have 3 grandchildren in the Kent School District, and I will have 2 in the Renton School District. And I know that it's a common kind of a domino effect. What Seattle does, you know, the other districts, smaller districts around, will be looking at. I think ethnic studies in the schools are vital. The last school where I taught was Van Asselt Elementary, which has one of the most diverse populations in the district. We all know that the majority of teachers are not minority in the district, and it's not likely to change for a while. So I think it's very important to encourage. I know we can't require, but to push, to encourage the present teachers to research other cultures, the history, their current events, the issues in their communities, so that they can be more understanding. Last weekend, I went to a meeting of SEE, which is the Social Equity Educators.
I'm sorry, could I ask you to please conclude your remarks within the next 5 to 10 seconds? We have a 2-minute window.
Sorry. Anyway, yeah. I'm curious if there has been a survey regarding which teachers or who is capable of teaching ethnic studies in the district. How are they going to recruit the teachers? What are their requirements going to be? I guess I'm almost done.
Thank you so much.
This concludes the sign-up list for public testimony this evening. Thank you.
Okay, so we're a little ahead of normal schedule. And Director Harris has been following along on TV, and she's calling back in now.
Hi there. Yeah.
So I'm going to open it back up if any directors would like to add additional comments with regards to testimony or anything else. Director DeWolf?
Yes, thank you. Just first want to say thank you again to Alexandria Rodriguez for coming and speaking. Always super grateful to have students here speaking not only for themselves, but even more so for the students and their peers. So really grateful to her for coming to share with us today. And also just wanted to, I guess, reply back about particularly focused on ethnic studies. Really great suggestion, and thanks for that question. I know we're all very excited for ethnic studies as becoming part of our curriculum, and so again, there's an event this Saturday at 3 p.m. at El Centro de Raza to learn more, and we hope to have some really great news coming up the next few months about ethnic studies here within Seattle Public Schools.
Would anyone else like to add to their comments? Director Geary.
I would just ditto exactly Director DeWolf's comments, and I'll leave it at that because those were pretty much mine as well. I do want to thank Anita for coming and testifying. I ran into her out in the hallway and told her we had a short list and that we would be excited to hear her point of view. So thank you so much for taking that moment and talking to us. And then the only other thing is I'm going to continue my almost every Tuesday morning meetings at Zoka on Blakely behind the University Village from 8 to 9:30. You're welcome to drop in, chat. I usually have a group of regulars, but usually there's one person who shows up to bring an issue that we all can reflect upon, and I really appreciate that. There are times when I can't make the Tuesday morning meeting, but I always post it. You'll know the morning of if you look on my Facebook page. The school board one is the most reliable, but I try and copy it over to my personal one too, depending on which one you've managed to follow or ping. So I will continue those, and I hope to hear from people. Thank you.
Director Mack?
Yeah, I appreciate everyone who came out, ditto comments made. I don't want to take too much time, but I do want to respond in particular to the comment around the planning around our facilities and ensuring that every building that has needs gets addressed, and especially around Whitman and knowing that there are some challenges in that building now and it was not selected for the BEX 5. But what was put into that package, which if voters approve it in February, there are many buildings across the district are getting critical maintenance needs met, as well as I believe 8 that are getting replacement and modernization. And I have a question around where Whitman's critical needs may be in that plan, and we're working on the committee work plan around presenting around the implementation plan for BEX 5, potentially having a work session in February, hopefully. So that whole process should illuminate, and hopefully the critical needs will get planned out and we'll pass our levy.
Thank you. Director Pinkham, did you have some more you'd like to add?
Yes, just want to again thank everyone for coming out and sharing their public testimony, and especially to our student, Alexandra Rodriguez, coming up and sharing her voice and concerns that we don't overlook the children that always have the most needs, those that are homeless, parentless, and struggling with a lot more outside of school than in school. So thank you, Alexandra, and reminding us that we need to take care of those who sometimes have the most needs. Juanita, thank you for sharing your views on ethnic studies, and once we do implement this, that we make sure that we have ways, make sure the teachers that are in front of the class have been trained and acknowledge how to approach this. We had some struggles with this since time immemorial, and thankfully we had some people coming in and provide training for our teachers and plus the administrators at the school levels to help implement that, and hopefully we can duplicate that for our ethnic studies program. Melissa Westbrook, thank you for bringing up the concerns that you have. I too, I guess, would like to see more information about this Check Yourself survey. What information are we getting out to our parents? And do we need to check ourselves? Are we following a good protocol if we're asking minors to complete a survey without the parents knowing? Maybe they are getting informed some way, but if we're getting some feedback that doesn't seem like the message is getting out, let's see what we can do about making sure all of our parents are informed, especially those are English isn't their first language. I do not yet have a next committee meeting scheduled. I had to wait until athletic calendars came out. My daughter's playing basketball for Hazelwolf K8, and that did come out. Now it's just balancing all the schedules and seeing when I can have the next committee meeting. So just check the board website for my next meeting. Katsiaya, thank you.
Director Harris, would you like to add in?
I would indeed. Thank you so much. Thank you especially to Ms. Rodriguez. And mostly, thank you for calling out Donald Felder. He is one in a million, as is the entire staff and Principal Karen Andrews at our interagency. What they do over there is nothing short of a miracle every day. And of real note as well, Dr. Felder is also on the City of Seattle Families Education Preschool Promise Oversight Board. And we're very lucky to have his background and his continuing service with the African American Standing Committee as well. I am very concerned about the Check Yourself survey. I understand that legal has taken a look at it and said that it works. It may follow the letter of the law according to legal, but I have extreme difficulties with it, and I hope that we can revisit this as a board and as staff and with our partners at King County. You know, they say the road to heck is paved with good intentions. And I think this is a well-intended survey, but if we are not including our parents in the conversation, then something's wrong here, and we need to step up our accountability and transparency. And thank you to Ms. Galloway. We are making great progress on ethnic studies. One of the things, though, that you have rightly pointed out and that our partners at Social Equity Educators have pointed out as well is professional development are going to be the keys to a really robust implementation of ethnic studies. And frankly, we have to find the money to do that. But all, thank you for coming down and telling us, and Ms. Rodriguez, please bring your friends next time. We need to hear from more of you and more often. Thank you.
I'll put a cap on that. My colleagues have stated it nicely. I ditto all of that. I share the concern about the Whitman building. That was during all of our conversations around the BEX 5 prioritization. I was really worried that that particular facility was in really high needs. So as you're thinking about the different priorities for implementation for roofs, whether it's a short-term fix that will actually work, or whether it, what that structure looks like, I'd really appreciate hearing more about that. Similarly, with the Check Yourself survey, as I understand our policy, it does indicate that if we're doing research with our research policies, it does include a notification clause. And so hearing that we're not sufficiently notifying families is a warning flag for me that says we need to take a much closer look at that, how we're rolling it out and how we're communicating about it. And then similarly, Ms. Galloway, thank you for bringing your voice, and the ethnic studies process has been a really exciting one. I think it's a change from within and a change from without. So it's it's external, internal, sort of at the same time, and it's a new area for us. Instead of just buying a textbook and training people how to use a textbook, it's shifting a culture, shifting a mindset, and getting an entire organization to shift along with it. And I think that there's no way to learn better than teaching. So as our educators are delivering it, we have to be really clear that they're teaching it properly, and that way they'll learn it properly. And so there's the dynamic between professional development and implementation is going to be really challenging on that and really important. So I hope that you'll also stay in touch as you hear both the good and the bad, and help us with course corrections. I think that takes us back to the item that was removed from the consent agenda. And this was item number 3, I believe. I am looking for a motion for that.
Do you want to read the title? I can too.
The title, number 3, BEX 4, approval of budget transfer from BEX 4 program contingency to the Ingram High School Classroom Addition project budget, and approval of construction change order 2 for the project.
No, that should be
From
the
consent agenda?
BTA 3.
We're on the consent agenda.
I'm in consent. There we go. I thought that was in a different place. BTA 3, I'm one levy up. Award architectural and engineering contract K1322 to SM Stemper Architects for the 2019 roof repair and replacement project. Came before OPS on December 6th for approval.
I move that the school board authorizes superintendent to execute contract K1322 with SM Stemper Architects in the amount of $659,760 for architectural and engineering services for the 2019 roof repair and replacement projects, plus $1,000 for reimbursable expenses, with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract.
I second the motion.
Would staff or directors like to ask any questions or make comments on this? Looking to Richard Best and Director Pinkham.
Yeah, I was the one that asked to get this item removed. one, because of the updates since introduction, if you can help explain those, and then also if you heard the comments from one of our public commenters.
The updates from introduction, Director Pinkham, as you might remember, as Director Geary requested that we articulate some of the past history of improvements at our schools. And so we've added information of work done both at North Queen Anne Elementary School and then the African American Academy as well. I am aware of the roof leak problems that we are experiencing at Whitman Middle School. I have been engaged in conversations with Frank Griffin. This, at this moment in time, would be a facilities department issue, but our facilities department works very closely. Bruce Gower, who's the director of facilities, Frank Griffin is major preventative maintenance manager, and Chris Richardson and I, so that we can look at these types of issues and then figure out the best way to address them, cognizant of future plans for schools. So we want to be utilize the fiscal resources prudently for our citizens. So.
One question on that. Is the Whitman roof officially, based on date and condition, is it officially end of life?
It is near the end of life. There are strategies that we can employ, coatings, for example, that will extend roof lives 5 to 10 years. I need to go out and further examine that to make recommendations to our facilities department. We have major preventative maintenance dollars as part of our BEX 5 capital levy. Those have also been included in BTA 4 and BEX 4 moving backwards. And so Frank Griffin and I have been exchanging emails to go and look at the Whitman Middle School roof.
Thank you. Director Mack?
I think for a point of clarification from me, each year we approve a capital budget, which is based on the projects that are planned for the year and so forth. And so we're going through that process now, and in March, I think we're getting the full presentation of what all of those projects are, what the budget is, and what we're expecting to do. In this situation where Whitman might be showing some kind of critical needs sooner than maybe was planned or that kind of thing, is that something that potentially may show up in the budget that's presented in March for next year, or is it something that may be considered and discussed to be addressed prior to that in the current budget?
Yeah, the current repairs to prevent the leaks will be addressed with facilities department dollars at this moment in time. That comes from the general fund. That's an annual operating expense. Then the question is, does this roof need to be, are there strategies that we can employ to extend the roof life 10 years so that the occupants aren't experiencing roof leaks during that period? And, we can focus on the educational mission of that middle school. And that Frank Griffin and I need to go and look at and determine, what's the existing roof, what are the coatings that we could potentially use to extend that life. Director Mack.
So in short, the immediate leaks are going to be handled ASAP by
Correct.
Facilities, and then the longer-term solutions of the critical needs of the building are going to be worked out and discussed, and we'll be having further conversation around those plans.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Pinkham?
And then I think what really caught me when I was looking at this was the last red line item on there. The contract award to implement construction activities will be funded with successful passage of BEX 5. So this is, again, just to start the design process.
Correct.
The funding that's going to be used. But then in it says that the completion of the project, which I assume would be the construction as well, would be done by summer 2019. Does that allow us enough room to, once we get the design, to identify the construction people and get things started to complete by summer 2019, based upon if BEX 5 passes?
Great question, Director Pinkham. We have entered into an interim contract to get the design team started on these solutions for these roofs. These roofs are both catastrophic nature and failure. We need to be replacing these roofs during the summer of 2019. We will be bidding these projects March, April timeframe for work to occur, summer timeframe. It may extend into fall at the African American Academy, also Van Assel, but we will be able to complete the work during the summer months at North Queen Anne. But both of these need to be addressed. They have significant moisture intrusion problems.
Okay, thank you for the questions and comments. Ms. Scheck, the roll call, please.
Director Burke,
Aye.
Director DeWolf,
Aye.
Director Geary,
Aye.
Director Mack,
Aye.
Director Pinkham,
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Okay, so we're at a time where I think folks could use a break. We'll take a 10-minute recess and reconvene at 6:15 for the rest of our agenda. Okay, good evening. I'll call the meeting back to order. We're going to jump into the business action items here. And we have a fairly short list of action items. We have a rip-roaring 4 of them. And Director Harris has joined us. President Harris has joined us again. So starting with action item 1, approval of attendance area boundary changes to create an attendance area for the new Magnolia Elementary School, which came before Operations Committee on December 6th for
consideration.
Looking for a motion?
I move that the school board approve scenario D for the new Magnolia Elementary attendance area as outlined in attachment A and grandfathered assignments for students currently enrolled in grade 4 at Lawton Elementary and Catherine Blaine K-8. parentheses, rising fifth graders, end parentheses. Additionally, I move that the board grandfather assignments for the siblings of currently enrolled students in grade 4 at Lawton and in grades 4 through 7 at Catherine Blaine K-8. I move that the board direct the superintendent to take any appropriate action to implement this decision.
I second the motion.
Director Mack, would you like to open this up, or?
Certainly. So since introduction, when we had the conversation around the grandfathering, staff did the analysis and looked at the numbers and determined that it was feasible to also grandfather the younger siblings of the students that are staying at Blaine in the 6 through 8 portion. And so that has been added here. And also that the younger siblings at Lawton, which I think there were only 4 of them, but they were also grandfathered to create parity there. So that's the one major change. There was another constituent question that was raised in the community meetings previously, multiple times, as well as recently, around the assignment to the 6-8 portion of Blaine once the boundaries are changed and there are more middle school seats made available, and how do students in all of Magnolia access those? And talked with Ashley a little bit today about that. And maybe you can kind of explain. Should I try to explain, or do you want to try to explain, Ashley, the challenge here with, or the staff's recommendations around how to resolve that request?
I can try to explain. So, as Director Mack, Ashley Davies, Happy New Year, Director of Enrollment Planning. So, as Director Mack had mentioned, in our engagements, there were questions from the community at large. And so I just want to highlight that the opening of Magnolia influences and impacts the Catherine Blaine K-8 community as well as the Lawton community. And so when, based off the boundaries that we have here in front of you, Magnolia would take a portion of the Catherine Blaine attendance area, a large portion, and a very small portion of the Lawton attendance area would create the new Magnolia. And so we have had interest from both the Lawton community as well as the Catherine Blaine community that will now be assigned to Magnolia to have the opportunity to access seats at Catherine Blaine. So not just those formerly who were in the Catherine Blaine attendance area, but those who are also in the Lawton attendance area have interest in middle school seats at Catherine Blaine. And so there were some questions around, well, how can we ensure that those available seats will be able to be accessed by the families who live in Magnolia? And currently, we have, and looking at this past year, we were able to accommodate those who wanted seats at the middle school level. We also have seen historically that families outside of the area are not wanting to access those seats just because of distance, other things like that, considerations at play as we think about the travel time. So we are not recommending any specific language that would change our policies in terms of how students access those seats. That would have to be a change specifically to the student assignment plan if we were going to make that change. But we will continue to have that language that we talked about on the 19th that just proactively reminds families that they have the ability to access those available seats at grades 6 through 8.
And for clarification for the public and for everyone here, the student assignment transition plan, which was originally slated to be here tonight for approval, has been delayed till our next board meeting. And that's where language is already proposed to help clarify that students can, during open enrollment, select the 6-8 portion as an option as space is available. And also the transportation services document has also been delayed for another 2 weeks because those two things are tied very closely together. The question that came to my mind today in thinking of all of Magnolia as a neighborhood, and if we are not going to set a attendance area or geozone for the 6-8 portion, which I agree is not the appropriate thing to do to guarantee assignment, because I don't think we can. I think that would be over enroll the 6-8 portion if we guaranteed assignment. However, they're outside of the Blaine walk zone. There may be students, if they're opting in from, say, the Lawton area or Magnolia, a new attendance area, maybe outside of the 1.5 or 2, whatever the mile range is for busing. So I'm wondering if it will be appropriate for us to add into the transportation services standard a clause that guarantees that within the Magnolia neighborhood, for students that opt into the 6-8 portion, that they would have access to that bus that kind of circles around the outside edge of Magnolia. There's already a bus that goes, and it actually isn't full because of, and it won't be because of Blaine and where it is, because the walk zone, if you look at it. And I think we might need to get more specific numbers exactly on that, but I think the numbers you came up with today is there's only...
So currently there are 2 buses that Catherine Blaine in its entirety has for the school across all K through 8. There are about 10 to 12 students in the middle school grades who are taking a bus to school. We are working with transportation to get a little bit more information around the specific standards that apply to the 6-8 portion and the distance guidelines, and then what that could look like if there's already a bus that exists to be able to accommodate students.
I think that it wouldn't actually add a bus. It would just allow those students in Magnolia, because if you look at geographically, it's a 3-mile by 2-mile neighborhood, and then the transportation service standards is 2 miles. So it's not likely to add it, but there are around the edges of Magnolia potentially a few students that it would be fair if we're allowing them to opt in to provide that. But I think that doesn't live here in this current bar. It lives in the transportation services standards, which we'll be voting on in 2 weeks, so we can continue to have further conversation about how that language, or if that language does get in there. I personally think it would be a fair way to help support the families in Magnolia that want to access the 6-8 portion, to feel clear that option will exist and that they will have access to it. It's something that they really want more access to. So.
Any other questions or comments?
There was one other thing.
You have one other thing? Will it affect your vote?
It will not affect my vote, but I don't think so.
Proceed to the roll call, please.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
Director Geary?
Aye.
Director Mack?
Aye.
Director Pinkham?
Aye.
Director Burke?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
This motion is passed unanimously.
Next up, item 2, approval of attendance area boundary changes for Robert Eagle Staff Middle School and Jane Addams Middle School for 2019-20. This also came before OPS December 6th for
consideration.
Motion, please.
I move that the school board approve the middle school attendance area boundary changes as outlined in Attachment A and grandfather assignments for currently enrolled students impacted by these changes. Additionally, I move that the board direct the superintendent to take any appropriate action to implement this decision.
I second the motion.
Questions or comments from my colleagues?
There have been no changes since introduction. No one has any questions? It's pretty straightforward.
One, I think, brief. I just want to express gratitude as somebody who, in a previous year, sort of tried to call an audible to change this area. I appreciate the thought that's gone into, the areas 91 and 92 and reaching out to the community there. I hope that's a benefit for both the area 91, 92 community and the Robert Eagle staff community. I know you already have your eyes on the Jane Addams and making sure that we have a strategy in place that we're not going to get caught, next year or the year after as their enrollment grows. But thank you. Director Mack?
I think I'm just curious to know about, or just clarify that we are planning to soon start the engagement around the school for future for next year, right? We're looking at having those meetings, and there have been some meetings already around with Licton Springs, and we've been getting questions from the community about when are the next steps, because we know that we're not resolving the overcrowding in that building with this. So I'm curious to know if we actually have any sense of what timeline the community engagement around this will be.
I'll defer to.
So we will have a meeting in February, again with the Licton Springs community. And then typically with this work given for the next school year, we'd start engagement in early spring. After we've already had open enrollment open and had a little bit of time to kind of, on the back end, assess some of that data. So we will probably begin engagement at the earliest in March, but we'll be looking at that for this as well as our Maple, Van Asselt, Wing Luke, and Mercer conversations.
Any other comments or questions? Ms. Scheck, the roll call.
Director Geary? Aye. Director Mack?
Aye.
Director Pinkham? Aye. Director Burke?
Aye.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Bring us to item 3, BEX 4, approval of budget transfer from BEX 4 program contingency to the Ingram High School Classroom Addition project budget, and approval of construction change order number 2 for the project. I tried to do this one earlier. Thank you for the correction. This came before OPS also on December 6th and was moved forward.
For approval.
The motion, please.
I move that the board authorize allocation of up to $2,069,000 from BEX 4 and BTA 4 capital funds to implement annual capacity management actions in spring semester 2018-2019 and summer 2019 to support projected district homeroom capacity needs for the 2019-2020 school year, and authorize the superintendent to take the necessary steps to implement the actions as detailed in the attached capacity management recommendations.
I second the motion.
I notice there are no changes to this since introduction. I'm looking at
Director Burke, it should be approval of budget transfer from BEX 4 program contingency to Ingram High School Classroom Addition project.
that is correct.
That's my bad.
Oh.
Sorry, it's my first day on this job.
Oh, sorry. right title, wrong motion.
Hello, it's Grace, 2019.
We'll work it out.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have.
Let me retry this here. I really want to get through this agenda clearly. I move that the school board, 1, approve the transfer of $1,500,000 from the BEX 4 program contingency account to the Ingram High School Classroom Addition project budget, and 2, checking in midway. Is this the right one, Richard?
Yes.
Okay. And 2, authorize the superintendent to execute construction change order number 2 as attached to the board action report in an amount of $1,447,288 plus Washington State sales tax, with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary action to implement the change order.
Okay, so let's try this again. There have been no changes since introduction. Do directors or staff have any comments or questions? Seeing none? Ms. Scheck, the roll call?
Yeah.
On this one? Oh,
On this
sorry.
one, yes, there was public
Oh, my
question
bad.
around this project.
No, that was the, well, was there?
No, there is I think there's a misunderstanding about these dollars and whether or not they were previously approved. They were actually part of the previous. Can you explain exactly how
Yes,
this plays
the-
out?
In the BEX 4 capital levy, we made a commitment to implement priority 1 seismic improvements at numerous schools. These are additive alternate, I gotta just make sure. Yeah, additive bid alternate number 2 is now being included in change order 2 for Ingram High School. These are priority 1 seismic improvements in building 100. And so this is a levy commitment that we made to the voters, and we're asking for your approval on this tonight. I did watch the public comment period, and this will not be cheaper to do at a later date. We have a contractor on site. He's given us a bid amount in which to implement these seismic improvements. If we were to implement this at a later date, we'd have additional design costs, additional permit costs, and then also the construction costs. So, and this was publicly bid, so it's reflective of the current competitive, construction market.
Thank you for that clarification. Now, Ms. Scheck, the roll call, please.
Director Mack? Director Pinkham?
Aye.
Director Burke?
Aye.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
Director Geary?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Okay, moving to number 4. Let's see if we can get this one all synced up. Number 4, approval of capacity management actions for the 2019-20 school year. This also came before Ops on December 6th and was moved forward.
Approval.
For approval. Thank you. Motion, please.
I'm taking an extra second to confirm that I know what I'm doing. I've actually already moved it, but I move that the board authorize allocation of up to $2,069,000 from BEX 4 and BTA 4 capital funds to implement annual capacity management actions in spring semester 2018-2019 and summer 2019 to support projected district homeroom capacity needs for the 2019-2020 school year, and authorize the superintendent to take necessary steps to implement the actions as detailed in the attached capacity management recommendations.
I second the motion.
This has also not had anything since introduction. Questions, comments from staff or directors? Director Mack.
Yes, I think I just want to make the point that these capacity management actions that we're approving the dollar amount, plus there's, some flexibility in how it plays out because we have to wait for open enrollment to happen to actually know what really needs to happen. Some things we think we really know, and then there's the things we don't. And that updates on that, what will be happening, will be coming to the board in future work sessions, so that we're all informed of how these are actually playing out.
And I just add one more comment, Director Mack, with your action today on the Robert Eagle Staff Middle School, Jane Addams Middle School boundary. Becky Asensio, our K-12 planning coordinator, will be working with Ashley Davies to see what the student implications are there for an enrollment projection. These are based upon the September 5-year enrollment projections, and so this will shift those 2 areas that you referred to, Director Burke, into Jane Addams, and we'll look to see if the implications are still placement of 2 portables at Robert Eagle Staff Middle School. I am very aware that Director Pinkham would like to add no additional portables to Robert Eagle Staff Middle School, and so we are looking at strategies to implement to, hopefully meet that objective.
Director DeWolf.
I have a quick question around the equity analysis. So it says it was not put through the full racial equity analysis, but I'm curious, particularly when we prioritize or kind of outline which schools are receiving that support, what is the decision-making process, and will that utilize any racial equity toolkit or something to inform how we're kind of prioritizing that list of projects?
Generally, we're using data, Director DeWolf, that Ashley Davies has generated in the 5-year enrollment projections, then the open enrollment. When open enrollment period closes in February, we utilize that data as well. In the past, I'm not aware that we've put an equity lens upon our recommendations, but we'll definitely work with Ashley and Becky to see if we should be applying an equity lens.
And I
to-
imagine those will come through operations as
They
well.
will.
Cool.
They
So
will.
maybe we can just have another conversation there. Thank you.
No other questions, Director?
I just comment and want to thank them, Richard, for mentioning Licton Springs, and that I want to keep them in mind as we're looking at expanding the capacity or trying to control the capacity of Rob Eagle staff, that it doesn't hurt Licton Springs.
Yep.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Scheck, the roll call, please.
Director Pinkham? Director Burke?
Aye.
Director DeWolf?
Aye.
Director Geary?
Aye.
Director Mack?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
This motion has passed unanimously.
Okay, everyone, we're doing great. We've moved to introduction items. We have 2 introduction items on the agenda for this evening. Just 2. And first introduction item is amendment to board policy number 2024, online learning, repeal of board policy number C16.00, acceptance of correspondence or college courses for high school credit. This came before Curriculum Instruction Committee on December 11th and was moved forward with a recommendation for approval.
Okay, good evening. Kyle Kenosha, Executive Director of Curriculum Assessment and Instruction, and so on behalf of our Department of College and Career Readiness, presenting this board action report. Actually, first of 2 that are related. The changes in the board action report that we're asking the board to approve are actually relatively small, in that in policy 2024, expanding the scope of it from just online courses to all out-of-district courses that we would be approving and accepting, and as well repealing C16.00 because it's very outdated in terms of specifying, where some of these credits, out-of-district credits, can go to. But however, it's connected to much larger changes, which are actually featured in the accompanying procedure. And what it does is it rectifies some things that were identified by an internal auditor in terms of huge inconsistencies and some inequity in terms of how out-of-district credits were being awarded. Although these are not part of the policy, just wanted to inform the board that this allows us to do 4 major changes that help achieve consistency and equity. First of all, it helped to divide out-of-district credits into 2 categories, one in which were awarded for courses that were not necessarily offered in high school, the other category being credit recovery. That allowed us to really specify some procedures that would make both fair and equitable. The other thing that we did is that we changed the grade for any out-of-district course to a pass, no pass, because of the fact that what we're finding is that folks that could afford to get out-of-district credits would then get a grade, and it would be used to inflate the GPA, which meant that this created unfair advantage in terms of competition for things like scholarships and class rank. It also created a decision tree such that the acceptance of out-of-district credits would be consistent at every high school, because we had situations where some schools were not accepting credits, but other schools would be accepting the same course to be added to their transcript. And finally, it limits out-of-district credits to high school students only in terms of ones that, are, taken for credit. It rectifies a problematic situation in which middle school students would take courses. The middle school would have very little capacity to assess whether those courses actually did prepare students for things like advanced courses. And it also, the other thing related to this is that it specifies the number of credits that are accepted for out-of-district credits for first-time credit down from 8, and then specifying that we would accept 8 credits for credit recovery. And I'll wrap up the comments on this to again reiterate that in addition to allowing us to have consistency and fairness, this was an equity measure because it does take away unfair advantage that some families had in terms of getting out of district credits in order to do things like inflate GPA. So I'll just stop here for any questions.
Director Geary, would you like to tee this off?
I want to thank you so much for this work because it's something that we've been talking about for a while, working over the language, and you were very patient with me and all of my input in terms of doing that. I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank Principals Howard, Breland, and Weinkoop, who took some time to meet with me to explain the importance of these changes and how it would create consistency through our district, the issues that they were facing in implementing it, the different ways and discrepancies that how the different high schools were implementing the different policies with regard to those credits. So I just wanted to be sure to share my thanks in all the time that was given and the responsiveness of the district in taking the time to think out a plan and provide a procedure that really allows the principals to do a good job, do a consistent job, and relieves them of having to fill in the blanks and create inconsistencies, which then create hardships between the different schools because parents talk and one parent finding out from another. So all that appreciated. I do want to mention that it is, of course, I think, everybody's desire to be able to vet all of the online courses and make sure that they're providing the quality of education that we know our students need to be successful. And it is unfortunate that we don't have the resources to do that, nor can we really provide assurance that the courses on this list have been appropriately vetted by the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, because I think all the feedback that we've gotten is that that is not the case, that these are basically corporate education products that are being sold, have been approved, and people take advantage of for a number of different reasons. And I'm not going to get into that, but I do want to also commend you and our staff, because I know that when we have the opportunity to provide the content, we're providing a content that is more robust and is better preparing our student. So thank you for all the work around this. And if I had my wish, we would be able to vet all of these and put a star next to the ones we know were best. And in my dream world, if we had those kind of resources, that's what we would do. But I acknowledge that at this point in time, that would be very difficult for us.
Mm-hmm. I will point out that we are continuing to discuss this issue, and we're looking at the idea that we might be able to possibly look at a very limited number of courses, especially those that are, or programs that are granted through credit retrieval. So at the very least, we could take a look at those.
I know when I sat down with the principals, they expressed their desire for such an endorsement around the credits that they're encouraging people to take advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
Director DeWolf and then Director Mack.
Yeah, I just want to share gratitude. I really appreciate, I know particularly in the bar, talking about community engagement, we focus this on tier 3, which is collaborate. So really just grateful for all the work that takes, which sometimes takes more time, but is also very critical work. And really grateful for the really thorough rationale. So folks in the community or that are watching at home, really helpful to see what the changes are and why we made those changes. So really appreciate the work on this.
I think I sat in one of the meetings where we talked about this, but I haven't been deep in the weeds on this, and I have a couple of questions based on the things you just said, just to kind of understand exactly what we're doing here. The courses are still, we have to still approve courses in our course catalog, correct? So these courses are the same course names, but they're being taken elsewhere, correct?
Actually, they might not actually jive with our course catalog, because we have, pretty specific names for those. They would have some equivalency, which is why we make parents actually fill out a form so that we can actually assess whether the course that is going to be taken does have equivalency with what we offer in our course catalog. It's important to note that in the procedure, parents have to actually get approval in advance in order to take a course. So this procedure allows us to assess that.
But there isn't the same process of approval of the course name that we have for all of our courses. So this is outside of that.
We would look at the name as well as the content of the course in order to see whether it matches the rigor of the course that we actually offer.
And so it's district staff that will be making that
That's
decision
correct, yeah.
Instead of principals now?
Well, actually, principals would be involved in this quite a bit. Procedure specifies that at certain times our department is actually called in to, actually assist this process.
But where does the decision lie? Like, who is the actual authorizer? The principal or the?
The principal.
So we're still having principals having different decision-making at different schools. We're not actually unifying that into one standard of who gets to, it's still going to be, it still could be somewhat arbitrary.
Well, I think this reduces considerably the arbitrariness because of the fact that if you look at the procedure, there is a very clear decision tree in terms of it narrows down considerably the types of credits that you would accept or, and it basically essentially says once those provisions are fulfilled that principals should then go ahead and accept them.
So that leads me to the second question, which is that, so we're limiting the students to a certain number of credits that they can access. So they can't go, they only can do 8 credits total?
Actually, for out-of-district credits, for which, it's the first time that a student takes them, they're limited to 4. For credit retrieval, and that's a student who may have attempted a course but failed, and then attempting to regain credit, that number is 8, and that's specified in the procedure.
Just out of curiosity, why are we limiting the number of times someone could actually correct or retrieve a credit from a failed course? I mean, that actually, just in my mind, is disadvantaging students that have failed, and maybe they failed more than 8 times. And for them to actually be able to graduate from high school, don't they need the opportunity to retrieve all of those credits? I don't understand why we're capping credit retrieval.
We do actually have a provision in there to really examine, there might be some specific cases, such as hardship, but, we did want to actually set a number that, was a ceiling. But there is language in there that does allow us to look at hardship cases.
I guess I'm fundamentally not sure why we would cap the number of credits that a student could retrieve if necessary. I don't understand why that is even helpful to have a cap on it, because I think we want to give students as many opportunities to graduate and be successful in high school, and not allowing them the opportunity to retrieve credits by capping it, to me, I don't understand the logic there.
Yeah, Director Geary did a lot of work on this. Did you want to comment on that?
Well, around that issue, this isn't it's my understanding these aren't the only credit retrieval opportunities, correct?
Yeah, that would be correct.
And so we have other credit retrieval opportunities that we provide in district that we would actually, I think, in many cases prefer people to utilize because we understand the quality of the education that is being given. That because we cannot guarantee the quality of the education that they're retrieving, the more that they get that is potentially not at the standard we want, isn't preparing them. We're not assured, our principals are not assured that those kids are going to leave their high school with a diploma from Seattle Public Schools that will allow them to participate in the coursework that's going to be presented potentially at a college level. That is the concern of our principals, that what they're seeing in terms of the quality of the education isn't what they would hope these kids would leave with. So that by capping it, there's some assurance that there's a greater incentive to work within the school system to retrieve credits in the classes that we offer.
So then are the Running Start credits excluded from this policy?
Yes.
Yes.
But
These
You
are
know-
online credit retrieval types of
But
opportunities.
out of district is defined, to me, would be the
We spent a
community
lot
college
of
Running
time,
Start.
and so we could probably, and it took a lot of time because we had to run through a lot of different scenarios, and we would spend a lot of time tonight doing that. But we've been working a long time.
I
So-
appreciate
It
the work
sounds
that's
like
been
there
going
might be
into
an
it, but I have
opportunity
some
to
big
come and have a
questions around
one-on-one meeting.
the language here. So
Yeah, I think, you know,
we're
it's
in intro, and
important.
this is the time to ask.
And keep in mind that this is, what we're talking about is the language not of the policy which we're voting on, but the procedure which accompanies it. So we're not voting to approve the procedure, and if we have ongoing conversations around that, we can continue to have those conversations because that is a procedure.
Yeah, and my questions are around the policy language of out of district and what that includes and doesn't include, and that's not clear to me, and whether or not Running Start, for example, would actually accidentally fall into this, and that would be capping
We're saying no,
students.
doesn't.
Yeah, it specifies
I'm,
what that
I'm,
is.
I'm looking to staff to address these concerns specifically.
Yeah, I can do that. It does, the language is clear. There are 4 categories in which we label out-of-district credit. You know, one category being college and universities, others from some online course, the other from private school that a student might access, as well as a public school in another district. Those are the 4 that we specify.
So a student transferring in would still be able to claim all of their credits from their out of district.
Yeah, in fact, you know, that's kind of the one exception to approval. If a student already has credits on their transcript coming in, it specifies that, you know, basically, you know, we approve those if, you know, they're valid for graduation. So we don't simply say, okay, we, you know, for an incoming student from another district, wouldn't look at their transcript and say, no, you can't have that credit.
My last question was around why are we disallowing middle school credits?
You know, it's noted in the bar that it turned out to be very problematic in that oftentimes parents would access courses. We had no ability to, you know, assess the quality. In many cases, the motivation for those were enabled students to get right into advanced courses in the high school. And then we would find that in many cases they weren't necessarily prepared because of the fact that we couldn't assess quality. Jumping ahead a little bit, you know, the next bar and the next policy actually talks about ways in which middle school students actually can earn high school credit. But it, you know, essentially is under our supervision that happens.
I just want to say that I just kind of have continuing concerns around making sure that our policy language doesn't accidentally, unintentionally capture, like Running Start, that kind of thing. So I do want to follow up and make sure that the policy is written in a way that it's not going to derail what we are expecting to be doing.
It is not related to Running Start.
Thank you for the input. What I'm hearing is a very real concern about some of the policy level work. A lot of the conversations that I was part of and heard and I'm grateful for were at the procedure level. So I guess I'm just going to ask my colleagues and staff to take a look at that policy language in light of this discussion, and if you have recommendations, if there are things that seem vague, to consider those. Our next item, number 2, amending board policy number 2420, high school grade and credit marking policy. This also came before CNI, also on December 11th for approval. And Kyle Kenosha is still at the dais, or it's the podium.
Sure. So one of the things that this revision does is that it aligns it with policy 2024 in terms of clarifying the conditions under which we actually could award high school credit to middle school students. And again, as I point out, it would be under our supervision and our assurance that it does have the quality to actually prepare students for high school. But the other thing is that it basically brings it up to date because the old policy had state tests such as end of course exams, which are no longer in existence. So we changed the language to make that generic, as well as the fact that we needed to bring the grade level promotion criteria in alignment with the fact that we're increasing the number of credits for graduation from 21 to 24. So those promotion levels have to be adjusted. And the last thing is kind of a minor change in terms of running start designating. We pretty much just say that it's whatever the community college entrance exam is. We actually named an exam the Compass exam, which might or might not have necessarily applied. So we simply said that we would look at the community college's entrance exam. We made the language generic, so it wouldn't be out of date.
Are there any questions or concerns around this item? Director DeWolf?
Yeah, sorry, I have one. So in the conversation we just had from introduction item number 1, the high school policy work group had said around the middle schools, not allowing middle school, that whole conversation. In here, it also then talks about in part B of the policy, it says that courses taken at a district middle school that meets or exceeds the requirements for the same high school course and which are on the Seattle Public Schools approved course list. But that, I just want to make sure, and maybe I can do this offline too, but it sounds like that is antithetical to each other. It doesn't work. So am I misreading it?
Okay. I think I'm not sure of the question.
Let me be more specific. Sorry.
Okay.
In 2024, we're recommending that allow out of district credits for high school students only, not middle school students.
Correct.
And that can only be try to respect the high school principles. But then in this one, we're saying middle schoolers can take high school credits, which is kind of goes against what the rationale for the former one just was, is what I'm trying to say.
I want to make a very clear distinction. 2024 talks about credits that a middle school student might get outside of our system, in such a way that we'd have really no control over the quality of that. What policy 2420 talks about is how middle school students could get credit, but they would be working within our system under our supervision.
Thank you.
So,
I have maybe a related question around our students in middle school. Is there any sort of eligibility for competency-based credits for any of those high school courses, or is that only at the high school level or post-high school or credit recovery?
I don't believe it's limited to just high school. So, for example, if you look at, the STAMP test, in other words, getting competency for world language, I don't believe that's limited to just high school credits. I did take a look at that policy, and it doesn't appear to make that distinction.
Director Mack?
Can you clarify which policy governs that competency-based credit? Do we have a policy that actually covers that part? Because
Yes.
we have this really big challenge of students are going to be required 24 credits.
We do have a competency-based credit policy.
And so and students can, I know we do it in the languages, and I've seen that.
Right.
Do we have an entire system around this is the test that would provide competency for X science class?
We have the structure for it, but we don't have the assessment bank that is aligned to that structure. And fill in for me if I do this wrong. But
Yeah.
to be able to say competency for every class, it's not like we have an end of course assessment for every class that demonstrates competency.
Yeah.
It's
It
only
does-
select ones.
Yeah, it does specify, both the policy and procedures specify how we might actually look at that, how we might, sort of create the conditions to actually specify proficiency. But the procedure itself would not actually specify exactly what, that would be. In the case of world language, though, it is very specific because the Association of Foreign Languages actually does have some very clearly spelled out ways in which students can get credit.
But we don't actually have specific guidelines laid out now for how you might obtain credit for a specific course in science or math or reading or one of those, any of them, that says if you do X score on the SBAC, if you do X score, we don't have that
Well,
done
actually,
yet, that work done yet, so that we could actually provide competency-based
It
credits.
kind of depends. One of the things that's specified, I believe, in 2420 is that, it updates that if you do actually pass one of the assessments that are required for graduation, you might be able to get a half credit in that particular subject. But in terms of other credits, and maybe this might be an offline conversation, I could indicate, that policy and procedure that talks about, proficiency awarding credit.
Just to be able to put that, would you be kind enough to just shoot an email to the directors that highlights what that policy is?
Absolutely.
And then we could have that available if people are interested.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments on this item? So this concludes our business this evening. The board is now immediately recessing the regular board meeting into executive session for an employee meeting pursuant to RCW 28A.405.230, which is scheduled for 45 minutes with an anticipated end time of 7:50 p.m. The meeting will adjourn at the conclusion of the executive session.